Now, welcome back. It's time for us now to pay that special focus on the CBC divide, and the pioneer cohort of grade 9 learners are expected to transition to senior school in January 2016 amidst the growing concern over the grey areas in the transition. Many parents and learners are still in the dark over the modalities that will be used in deciding which career pathways learners should take. There are questions as to which schools will offer what pathways in the choice of three, that is STEM or science-based, social sciences, and the arts and sports science options. And now Safina Chengoma details this transition dilemma.
Emmanuel Ngunjiri is a grade 9 learner living in Kayole Estate in Nairobi.
I want to become a sea captain because I want to travel in the seas and explore new places.
Much as he and his family appreciate the upside of the new curriculum, his future is uncertain as he is expected to join senior school next year amidst unclear transition guidelines.
Ile rumors unasikia ni watoto wa imaliza grade 9 wataenda senior secondary. Na hiyo senior secondary si ama ile ya kitambo. Hii ni kulingana na ile mtoto anafanya. Ni itampeleka hiyo shule nyingine ambayo hatujui ni gani. Sijui naitwa Meru ama ni Kisumu ama ni wapi, kulingana na vile
Ngunjiri hopes to become a sea captain in future, a dream his mother fears may be thwarted should the government fail to create adequate awareness on its transition roadmap.
Wanaenda aji ama inaenda waaji. Juu sasa hatujaambiwa mtoto atamaliza hii, ataenda hii, atafanya hii. Hata ama hiyo captain ama hiyo daktari, atajua aji yeye mwenyewe.
For now, I actually don't know. I'm just waiting for the government to decide on what the learners will about to do.
This remains the agony of many parents across the country.
Now that we have children who are progressing to senior school come next year. Any idea?
Michael Njuguna, a CBC facilitator at a CBC resource center within Gravity Amusement Park in Nairobi.
To make the right decision,
is taking a group of parents through the complex maze of career pathways. The missing link, he says, is the lack of proper synchronization between junior secondary school and senior school.
At least I need to know, my child is in junior school, they are doing line learning areas. Out of the line learning areas, if my child tells me to become an engineer, now I'll be starting having a discussion with my child, how is the child doing in engineer-related learning areas, so that they end up picking the engineer.
A significant aspect of the CBC implementation strategy is the insistence on parental engagement in learners' education outcomes. This is why CBC experts insist that the government needs to invest in creating awareness to parents like Modoni and teachers on how best to arrive at this make-or-break career decision in a three-pronged approach.
These three people should come to an agreement, the teacher, the child, and the parent, and agree after basing the facts, maybe from the assessment side, from the child's opinions, maybe from his or her interest.
Where the learner's ability and no interest, don't put them there. Where the learner's interest and no ability, do not put them there too. But where the learner has interest and ability, optimize.
The government has in the meantime sustained its commitment that its plans for a smooth transition from grade 9 to grade 10 are on course.
We shall be engaging our stakeholders for public participation on guidelines for placement of learners in grade 10, guidelines for implementation of senior school, and guidelines on career guidance in our junior schools.
Grade 9 learners will be transitioning to senior school next year. The race against time begins as parents, learners and teachers try to understand the dynamics of this transition. Their clarion call to the government through the Ministry of Education and other education stakeholders is that they will put in place measures to help them navigate this maze of CBC career pathways to avert wasting an entire generation. Safina Chengoma, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
All right, and with that, we want to dive into the conversation tonight, and this is about the 6th week of the term, that is the first term of 2025 academic year. In studio, I have Dr. Emmanuel Manyasa, who is the Executive Director at Usawa Agenda. I have Virginia Mururi, who is a CBC facilitator, and I have Moses Nthurima, who is the Deputy Secretary General at CUPET. And we are here to talk about the questions and the concerns that have been raised by Kenyans. We'll be looking at them. You've shared some of them with us on X and others on Facebook. We'll be populating every other question to talk about that. But first, Dr. You have seen all the stories about the quality of education, status of our infrastructure, and now the question of the transition. Let's first handle that question of the pathways. And what your organization has been able to find is the situation with the junior secondary school institutions where they're supposed to be preparing learners for the next level where they start to sort of specialize.
Thank you, Sam, for having me here, and I'm happy to share a few of the things that we've been doing. So when we look at the grade 9, I think that they were really disadvantaged. I am hoping that we can take this year to try and remedy some of that disadvantage that they have suffered. Because as Usawa Agenda, we did a rapid survey in December, second week of December, sampled 525 junior schools across the country in 21 counties. We found that 35% of those schools did not have a single STEM teacher. 79% of the teachers employed as of December were humanities in all the schools, with only 21% being STEM. So we know that the government through TSC has this month is actually currently interviewing and employing about 20,000 teachers with a focus on STEM so that they will come in to fill the gap. But when they are filling the gap in grade 9 and these learners are transitioning at the end of this year, that tells you that there is a lot of ground to cover for these learners who did not have a STEM teacher to be able to even have a dream of transitioning to STEM pathway come the end of the year. So we have that gap that needs to be filled.
Right.
We checked whether these learners were accessing laboratories from neighboring secondary schools. And only about 40% of them admitted being able to access laboratories from neighboring secondary schools. Many of them said they couldn't because either they didn't have a STEM teacher, so they had no one to take them to the laboratories. Some were not allowed by the secondary schools that were in the neighborhood. And those secondary schools were raising pertinent issues and saying, we are responsible for these facilities. So if we open them up, who takes responsibility over these resources? Some, especially those heads of girls' schools, were saying, I am responsible for these girls' safety when they're here. So if you tell me to open up the school to bring boys in here,
right, I
am ready to do that on condition that I'm not responsible for if these girls became pregnant in the school. So there were issues around whether these learners from junior schools could access lab facilities in neighboring secondary schools.
Right.
And I think that those are the gaps that as we think about this transition and recognizing the fact that these learners have been taught by interns, by and large by interns, and interns are not capable of guiding students into career pathways. We need to take this remaining few months very seriously to try and remedy something, salvage something. Let me use the right term, salvage something from these grade 9 learners who have been in a very big way disadvantaged.
Right, and I'll get to you, Virginia, shortly. But first, Moses, what is the experience of teachers? What are you hearing from them, especially having to go through the teaching in junior secondary, but also those in what will be senior secondary as they're preparing for the pathways?
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I want to say that generally among the teachers there is a lot of unpreparedness. As Dr. has rightly put it, is that even those who are in junior secondary schools have not gone through the retooling, majority of them. And for that reason, you'll find that the methodologies have not been internalized by the teachers. Those who are in high schools are still wondering what is CBC. Because if the situation is next year is like the way it is today, the learners will go and to those schools where we are not sure how the selection will be done, and they will just, remain in schools and be taught the 844 methods.
Right.
So that difficulty is still there. So what you are saying is that the ministry must move with speed, and the TSC to do the retooling for the teachers and prepare them. Secondly, in the number of the number of pathways, we don't have enough teachers. We don't have teachers actually. For example, something like aviation. How many schools have those teachers? Building and construction, electricity, metal, many other subjects which are going to be offered in the senior schools. So generally, schools are prepared, and people are still wondering what is going to happen.
You know, that is strange, because 9 years in, if you have to count that the first cohort is now in grade 9, what has been happening? Nobody has invited secondary school teachers to talk to them about this?
Nobody has invited, because, this curriculum was developed from 2012, and then when it began, it has now taken 9 years. And in primary, grade 1 to around 6, nobody cared. You could see teachers being retooled as the process was going on.
Right.
So when it came to junior school, it became a crisis to the government, because the previous government wanted grade 7 to be in high schools.
Right.
But the current government thought that those learners who spend more money in high schools, they should remain in primary schools. So the greatest consideration was they remain there so that the budget is less.
Is that so?
Yes, that is the reason, because scientists, curriculum scientists, and recommended they be in high schools. And that is why you saw the late Magoa walking in every school trying to build classrooms. And they built so many classes, which remained empty. In fact, were filled by Form 1s. Because when this government came in, they created a task force called the Working Party on Education, led by a gentleman called Professor Munavu, who is a chemistry professor. And then they decided to reverse what the scientists had recommended. And that is why there is a conundrum all over now. Because when you go to grade 7, grade 8, and 9, you can see the kind of classrooms where they are taking lessons.
Right.
Because of unpreparedness.
Okay.
So the confusion is all over.
Yeah.
With the CBC system.
Okay, let's clarify something. And I know, Virginia, you want to use your chat. You can walk to it as we talk about this, because there has been questions being asked by different stakeholders, including parents and learners, asking about what pathways we are talking about. So Virginia will be helping us walk through what those pathways should look like, and specifically help us understand what should learners in JSS be looking at in their current status, where they have to be exposed to the 3 pathways.
Okay. Thank you so much, Sam. So this is how we are talking about the pathways. So first of all, we need to know, where did this pathway come from? So it all begins from the preschool. That is, nowadays you're calling it the early years level. So once you get to know about where the learning areas came from, or the pathways, so we'll get to know how we are getting to JS. So mainly, when it comes to the early years, we have 7 learning areas in which we just talk about the activities. We have mathematics activities, we have Kiswahili activities, English, and all that. But as you go linking, you'll find that like a learning area like environmental activities, it gives or it links it to the middle school. That is where we have social studies, science and technology, and agriculture. And these 3 are coming from environmental activities. So we go linking until we get to the JS. This is the level now. So when it comes to this area, at first we had 7 learning areas, got to 8 learning areas in the middle school, then got to 9 learning areas in JS. So from the 9 learning areas, these are the learning areas that are giving birth to these pathways. So we must link from the learning areas in JS to the pathways.
So I'm seeing there's integrated science there, there's social studies, there's agriculture, there's mathematics, there's pre-technical, there's English, religious education, Kiswahili, and creative arts. That's what junior secondary school are learning now. So how do they get to deciding whether it's STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, or it's social sciences, or it's arts and sports science?
Okay, so these learning areas are based on the content that they have. If they have similar content, that is where we are getting the paths. So, for example, when you're talking about integrated science, pre-technical studies, agriculture, and mathematics, these ones have similar content. So that is where we are getting the first path, STEM. Secondly, we get to the other one, that is religious education. We have English, we have social studies, and Kiswahili. Those ones also, those learning areas are also giving us the second path, that is social sciences. Then the last one is about creative arts. That is the one that is giving us the last pathway, arts and sports. So these learning areas, they have been having them since preschool. So that these ones are the ones that are giving birth to the pathways.
So after, so that is senior secondary, isn't it?
Yeah.
So after that, where do you go?
After the senior, now these are the pathways in senior. They are giving us the tracks. So each pathway has different tracks. For example, for instance, when you're talking about STEM, it's giving, we are getting pure science. We're also getting applied science, and that is where we have technical studies. So from the 3 tracks, we are getting the learning areas that they are going to learn in senior school. So each of them, when you get to social science, same case. We have the humanities as the track, one of the track, and the languages as the other track. So down there, the green parts you can see are the learning areas in each of the path. Then the last one is art and sports, divided into arts and sports.
So ideally, if you transition to senior secondary in January 2025, and you decide to take the arts and sports science, you will only be offered music, dance, theater, and film, fine arts, sports and recreation, physical education?
Just that? Only 5. They're only 5.
Just that?
Yes.
You not study English or Swahili or anything?
So they are compulsory learning areas. We need to know that. You know, there are 42 learning areas in senior school. But from the 42 learning areas, they're only going to have 7. And from the 7, we have 4 compulsory. So that is where we have functional English, functional Kiswahili, community service learning, and we have physical education.
Those are compulsory for everyone?
Yes, for
whether you are in STEM, social science, or arts and sports science?
Yes.
Now, under humanities, which is arts and social science, I'm seeing the areas are either IRE, geography, CRE, or HRE, where IRE is stroke CRE stroke HRE, right? Then you have Fasihi Kiswahili, literature in English. You have other languages, you have sign language, you have lugha ya Kiswahili, English language. So all those, you choose how many, or you take everything?
No. So this is what is going to happen. After having the 4 compulsory, you have to choose 3. Now this is where the choices comes in. The 3, 2 are coming from your main path. So that means learners must know which career am I going to pursue. So that you can know which are these pathways that I'm going to, which is this path that is my main, that is going to lead me to this career. So if, for instance, you happen to take 2 learning areas in STEM, that is, maybe you take biology and mathematics, then you'll have another one, you will choose another one from a different path. So the reason as to why we are choosing 2 from your main, that is your main career. The career that you have. And then the other one that you're choosing from the different path,
Yeah.
you can have another career. So in CBC, it's giving maybe opportunities. There are a lot of opportunities.
Right.
So they don't want the learners to be locked in one path.
Okay.
They've got an opportunity or a chance to pick another learning area from a different path.
But this is a very significant position because whatever you choose will
Yes.
determine your career.
Very true.
Let's talk about the STEM, because I see there's a track on pure science where you can have chemistry, mathematics, or general science.
Yes.
So you choose the three or you take one of them?
You take one. One thing, you
Yeah.
have to have the career at the back of your mind.
Yeah.
So if your career you're taking medicine, you'll know the learning areas.
So you decide that early?
Yes, as early as now.
Okay, then I see applied science, you have the options of home science, computer studies, and agriculture. Technical science, you have wood technology, aviation technology, electrical technology, building and construction, media technology, power mechanics, and metal technology. Again, you choose?
You choose one.
One.
But one thing I've said, it all depends with the career.
Okay.
So if your career is in, you're choosing, for example, it's all about technicals.
Yes.
You can take the aviation. So after taking aviation, which is the other learning area that is connecting you, maybe it can be in the same track, but the same path.
Yeah.
So you can still choose another one as long as they are leading you to your career.
Okay, stay there. We'll come back to you. But Daktari, help us here. We have a grade 9 class. They're supposed to know what you're talking about here and make a decision in January. What is the possibility that we will be successful in that?
That's why I said we need to salvage something. Salvage something because as of now, if you speak to junior school teachers, many of them don't know these things that she's talking about, those in public schools. Why? Because some are being interviewed for the job now. They came from university, they are being interviewed for the job now, and they'll be teaching maybe as early as this month or next month. They do not know these things. That is one. Two, even when we present these things to the learners,
yes,
understanding that these are 11-year-olds, do they have the capacity to grasp these things? And that's why junior school was envisaged as a day school, expected to be taught by experienced teachers who will regularly engage with the parent as early as primary school and then junior school to be able to identify the strengths of the child, align those strengths of the child with the child's interest, and guide the child when it comes to making these choices. It was envisaged as that. We have not made it perform that role. Because right now, the teachers have not engaged with parents. They do not know most of this stuff, and they do not, most of them have the capacity to engage with the parent. And finally, many of them have been teaching very big classes, because we had 2 teachers in our school teaching so many children and trying to teach all learning areas because there were insufficient numbers of teachers. So they haven't paid attention to even know what are the strengths of the child and engage with the parent around that. So we need to really make significant gains in this 1 year, not 1 year, a few months that are left, to make sure that by November, we are somewhere close to where the learners are starting to grasp this whole idea of pathways, and that the parents are starting to grasp, and that the parents have been made to understand that their children, as much as they are their children, are also known much better academically by the teachers, and allowing the teachers some say in guiding them in terms of career choice.
Have you been able to monitor the sort of assessment that is going on there? Because that would ideally inform teachers and parents of where these children should be destined.
The last assessment that was done by NEC returned very, very damning results on STEM. Which undermines the national government's commitment to transitioning 60% of the children into STEM pathway. So that is a big problem there. Secondly, as we look at this, there is a bigger problem. Even when we manage to guide these children into making the choices, how many schools as the Secretary General has mentioned, how many schools are prepared to be able to pursue these pathways at senior school?
Right.
If you look at the technical track especially, how many of our public schools are capable of offering that technical track? We wrote a letter, as Usawa Agenda wrote a letter to the President and said, take this technical track to the polytechnics, to our TVET institutions, where there are workshops, there are trained tutors and experienced to be able to help these learners who have had very weak preparation in junior,
right?
Because they have had very weak preparation in junior school, to be able to catch up when they are choosing these tracks going into senior school. We hope that there will be a conversation around that, because if we say, let us now hurry up in November, December and hire, or January next year and hire technical teachers for these technical tracks, who either will be fresh from college or graduated from college but have never taught anywhere, to come and teach these people, continue to build a weak wall on a weak foundation,
right.
I think we'll be setting up these young people for a terrible failure and setting up the country for failure, literally.
Moses, so secondary schools exist as they do today, and they offer the same. There are those that have deficiency of even laboratory in the areas, especially the rural schools. But then again, what would it take to prepare schools for those pathways? And also, what do you think needs to happen? Because you must prepare the secondary schools with insight on what would happen to the bigger population. What pathways would they be pursuing?
Well, as the situation obtains now, most of the schools are not prepared for those pathways, except the one that is the social sciences, majority of the schools, because if you go to the STEM, you realize that so many areas have been introduced, which the facilities are not there, like this aviation, building and construction. We don't have teachers, and we don't have any university that we can comfortably say it has aligned itself to the CBC. Besides that, we have a problem of now employment of teachers. Teachers are being employed by politicians because the system, the government, is going for forms from the TSC and sharing to the politicians to go and employ. Which means even if there was a science teacher in the village who doesn't support a politician,
is that what's happening now, or has happening before?
It has not. Before, teachers were being interviewed, and there was a template of interviewing teachers, and the requirements were set by the commission. Today, the forms are being shared to the politicians.
You mean today? It's happening?
Yes,
now.
It is happening right now. So we are having difficulty.
Who is sharing the forms?
I think the commission will have to tell us, because that is their responsibility. Because we are seeing politicians dishing forms everywhere, giving their relatives and friends, and leaving out majority of the teachers. So the employment itself is a problem now, because the commission, when they used to interview, they knew the number of teachers they wanted and which areas. But today now we don't have that. It has changed. So what we are saying is that I think we need a conversation in the country on how to deal with the CBC, and particularly when it comes to moving to the senior secondary, because teachers are wondering, how do we start this when the learners come?
Okay.
Yes.
And of course, I'm asking about this particular recruitment of you said 20,000 teachers, because we have had those stories in the previous recruitment. We were hoping that because there had been some focus on that this time around it will be different. But if you confirm that indeed politicians are dishing out letters.
They are just sharing letters.
And have you complained?
We have complained everywhere that what is this that you are doing? Education is merit, it's meritorious. So when you start now not giving those who started early, those who left college early used to be employed before those who have just graduated. But now it has been mixed up.
Okay.
It is within the interest of the politician to give anybody, including the family members, and leave us out.
Okay.
Leave others out who graduated a long time ago.
Let's take a look.
We are having a problem.
Yeah, let's take a look at some of the questions that you've shared with us, and that is both on X as well as on Facebook that you've been writing to us. When we asked you, you told us that Evans Kamoing, you're saying that it's not even near the 844 system. Whoever came with the idea should be put behind bars. The content never matches the age of the learner as it should be whenever any curriculum is designed. The resources it requires is too much and very expensive. They rushed in its implementation. Wrong system in the wrong country. Who else is writing to us? So that was on X. The hashtag to use is Citizen Explainer. Well, it's taking a bit of time, but as we get that, Virginia, talk to us about, because there has been this complaint about the resources required to implement this CBC. You look at the stories that we featured there. I mean, desks are broken, toilets are not functional, or they are few. You have water points that are not sufficient. That would sound like basic, but what would an institution require to successfully offer CBC at whatever level? Is it primary school? Is it JSS? Is it secondary school? What does it require?
Okay, thank you so much. So when you're talking about the infrastructure, so first of all, you need to know, what do the JSS need? What do they require so that they can proceed to the senior school? So they need things like the laboratory, in which most of the school, you'll find that they do not have. It's either they have some of the apparatus, the materials, yet they do not have the laboratory itself. Secondly, when you're talking about pre-technical, this is a learning area that was introduced to these learners, yet they do not know what they're supposed to use. So you find that in most schools, there is no workshop to deal with the pre-technical. And in this area, you'll find that most of the careers or most of the learning areas are basically under pre-technical. Talking about wood technology, talking about metalwork. So they need resources so that when they get to choosing their pathway, at least they have an exposure to these things, to these materials that they are going to find in senior school. So if they don't have, you will find that it's a great challenge to these learners.
Right.
The other thing is about the kitchen. These are about nutrition. So there are these cooking activities, all these about utensils. They need to get exposed to them. So you'll find that most of the schools do not have a kitchen to deal with nutrition. They mainly have the kitchen to do with the school, only the cooking that takes place in the school. Yet they're supposed to have a kitchen.
That's at the JSS level or even at the primary level?
The JSS level. Even primary school, because when you're talking about nutrition, they begin cooking from grade 4. So from grade 3, they're supposed to be introduced so that they can know at grade 4, we are going to cook. This is what we're going to do.
So when teachers send their children, teachers send learners to their parents to bring in ingredients, where do they cook from?
I tend to think that they just do it maybe at the back of the class or maybe in the field, because there's no kitchen to do this. So you can see that that is a great challenge. And you know that in a kitchen, they're supposed to be exposed to things like fire extinguishers, in which, when you're talking about fire extinguishers, this is something that is introduced back in grade 3, fire safety, in which if they don't know about the fire extinguisher, how to use it in the kitchen, then that is a great challenge to these learners.
So tell me, because I see one of the subjects is integrated science or learning area. I don't know what it's called these days. Learning area, it's integrated science. And you need a laboratory for that.
Yeah, sure.
So what will you need in grade 7? What will you need in grade 8? What will you need in grade 9? What sort of exposure do you require at every level?
Okay, one thing, when it comes to the laboratory, they need the materials in which you're calling the apparatus. They need the chemicals, in which you find that most schools do not have they do not even know where to buy these chemicals that are not toxic to the learners. The other thing is about they need tables in which in which the learners are going to be they're going to have a working area that is conducive to them. So those are some of the things that they need to have, because the apparatus or the materials that have been used by the grade 7 are the same apparatus that are being used by grade 8. It's only that the concept is the one that is changing. So if you find that a school has a few apparatus, at least that will do. But the greatest challenge is that they do not have the laboratory, they do not, so in that, they do not have the apparatus, or what we call in the materials.
Yeah.
And in grade 5, 6, because that is where they talk about acid bases. So if they're not exposed to these things as early as grade 5 and grade 6, then what's going to happen to them when they get to the JS?
Daktari, so what disadvantage do they suffer? Is there a way of catching up that you are not exposed to a lab in grade 7, 8, and 9, but in some way you can catch up in grade 10?
I don't know really if it is possible to catch up, but we have had these challenges for a while. We've had students who have gone through small secondary schools and saw some of the lab apparatus during the exam. They never got exposed to them. The consequence of that normally that they fail exam. So when we are failing to expose these learners to the materials and apparatus that they need to learn, we're actually setting them up for failure. That cannot be gainsaid. And I think if you look at the structure of the system that we have come up with and the mistakes that we have made up to here, I know that there is a lot of effort to remedy some of those mistakes, but we have to admit we have made very many mistakes. And for me, what bothers me now is that we keep finding solutions to problems daily. We had a problem in January 2023. We created domiciling that was never in the CBC framework for grade 7. We now had a problem this year. We have tried to create a solution for grade 9 that is not helping them to catch up, but somehow helping them to get by. And we are compounding their lack of access to quality education as they go along, because at every level they are missing something. Right. And this is going to aggregate as they go up the ladder. And so my bigger problem is that we haven't prepared for senior, and so they will, just the same way they stumbled into junior, they will stumble into senior. And then the question that then begs is, what are we keeping these children in school for? To tick a box that they went to school, or to actually give them an opportunity to learn and make something out of their lives and make themselves able to contribute to national development. And I think that is important. We have seen the issues of lack of coordination. Mwalimu is mentioning very clearly the idea that we don't have colleges that are preparing teachers to teach these various subjects that we have introduced. Right now we have choir masters in the villages teaching children music, and those choir masters have never been trained in music by anybody, because you have teachers in the JSS, none of them has ever been trained in music. Music is one of the learning areas. And music is not something, it's a very technical area. If you are never taught music, you can never teach music, no matter how talented you are. So we have these challenges that are happening. And we have not created a comprehensive solution. And I would support the idea that we need a conversation. Part of that conversation is, what kind of framework do we put in place right now? One, to do two things. One, to try and help. Under the question you have asked, is there a way we can salvage something for these grade 9 learners, whom we have mistreated through the process? Two, how do we prevent this from becoming the permanent occurrence that every child who is going to school is going to experience what this pioneer class has experienced? For me, I think that we need a national body. I would think that the National Education Board, if revitalized, given mandate to oversee implementation of CBC, so that at all times, maybe on a quarterly basis, they're looking at the entire sector, they're coordinating the actors, because right now universities need to be getting ready. We are 3 years away from getting these learners into university. They should be getting ready on how they will deal with them.
Right.
These are learners who have been prepared differently. The lecturers who are in the universities have been oriented differently. We made a mistake when we were starting to implement CBC and said that, you know, the teachers are already teachers. All they need is a reorientation, so we can bring them to a hall on a Saturday, and by Monday they are able to teach CBC. That is what we did. We failed to prepare teachers to teach these CBC learners. Universities are busy doing everything they are doing, managing their current crisis. They will suddenly receive CBC.
And Virginia will be helping us on the other side to understand what will happen at the university level. It may look like it is too far, but it's not, because once upon a time, junior secondary was very far. Until now, we are at the end of that level of education. Just to note here, we invited the Minister of Education. They were not available from the Office of the Cabinet Secretary all the way down to officers who would have made a contribution here. But the conversation continues, and I want us to look at some of the feedback that has also come to us. This is from Mbugwa GK. This should be a Facebook, actually. How will placement be done in senior secondary? When will they deliver books for rationalized learning areas? When will the curriculum designs be delivered to schools? It's a big delay. I think Moses will help us understand if these curriculum designs are already being delivered. Let's take a look at something else. As Nixon Dugiro, you're asking, are there CBC-related programs to cater for parental empowerment and engagement? Because most parents are still confused, especially those from the interior rural areas who are unable to give proper guidance to their children. Virginia, you can note that down. Agumba Kagumba, you're saying that what procedure will be used to place these children is better to the STEM or arts science without inconveniencing learners? What if a learner is placed against his or her wish, or it will be by force, you're asking? Do you have another one that you can take a look at? Then you can pursue the questions, the answers. Warimo, you're saying that reorientation of secondary school teachers must start now before the students join senior school to avoid the kind of confusion in junior secondary. Maybe Virginia can start by responding to some of those questions, but also that other question of whether it's possible to catch up. I saw you give us a reaction. You can tell us what your answer is.
Okay, it's possible. For example, let me just give an example with the resource center that is at Gravity CBC Center. Because one thing you'll find that at CBC Center, the Gravity, we have all the resources. When we talk of all the resources, when you're talking about the laboratory, it's there. When you're talking about the music studios, we have them. So we need teachers and parents at least to bring their learners so that they can get exposed and know about whatever they did not learn. Because once you bring them, we begin from grade 7. What didn't you learn in grade 7?
So that means they have to make a private arrangement to catch up?
Yes, a private one.
But how does that reflect on a publicly funded education system that costs us 656 billion shillings?
That one is it's a little bit difficult because, you know, one thing, the public institution was supposed to have, first of all, implement or bring these resources into their schools. But you find that there are great challenges out there that even the desks, there are no desks. So if there are no desks, the classrooms are just, they're not organized at all. So you'll find that even the teachers are not there. So that one, it's a little bit tricky when it comes to public facilities. Yeah.
There's someone who asked about parent empowerment. What is possible to do at this time?
It's possible to empower them because one thing, same case, I'll just take it back to the example of Gravity. We've been empowering many parents. They have been coming. So we first of all introduce them.
How many have you served so far?
Countless number because it began from last year. Last year we had it. Parents have been coming, teachers have been coming, and also learners.
I'm asking, do you have an estimate of parents that you've served?
More than 2,000.
2,000.
Yes.
Now, if you had to go with 1 million children at every level, you're talking about 3 million children in JSS.
Yes.
That's 3 million parents.
It's possible because, you know, they won't come at once. But now, what you're going to do, or the plan that we have some mobile models. So we'll take them to different counties and try to empower these parents.
Okay.
Yeah.
Moses, this is the work of the government. I mean, they collect taxes, if not to do anything else, to offer education.
It is surprising that we have been out there, and the minimum internationally that the government can give in terms of financing education is 20%. The Kenyan government gives about 27% of the entire budget. That is around 600. Is it around 600 and
over 650?
56 billion.
Yeah.
This money does not reach the learner. So the question is, does this money go back to the exchequer, or where does that money go when it is voted for the ministry? So it is a question that we need to answer, because there is money, but this money does not come to the learner. A lot of money is left in the ministry. For example, this last year, the ministry was left with 28 billion of the learners. Cumulatively, if you look at the years back, it is now about 84 billion pending bills.
Sorry, 28 billion shillings. This is from what? Capitation or what?
Capitation, yes. Because they were left with 7,000 per learner. And we have about 4.1 million learners in high schools. So for last year, that is now the pending bills.
So these 7,000 shillings, what was the ministry to use it for if it didn't go to the schools?
You can't tell, because now they are giving, this year, they have given only 4,000 per learner in high schools, when they were supposed to give 11,000. So these are some of the things that they are supposed to explain to the public what is happening, because the learners do not get the 22,000 that is supposed to get in a year. They are getting less.
I thought that figure was revised downwards.
Yeah, to 17.
To 17,000.
It was not done in a policy, to the best of my knowledge.
Yeah.
But now when you look at that, you see that it's as if the government is trying to privatize and commercialize education, where the entire education go to the, private actors, and then the poor will not manage it because the standards are going down. If you look at the CBC today, in primary schools, the heads are primary school teachers, but those who are teaching there are graduates. Now they are trying to replace those who are sent there to teach in CBC from the universities, and then they are giving P1 teachers to go and teach.
To go teach JSS? Yes,
because they are differing with, that expectation of somebody who has come from a university. They expect at least a high school teacher to come and manage those institutions so that they are on the same level. But now when you give somebody who is at a lower level, there is a conflict of conflict of conscience, and that is where we are. We have a lot of, fights in schools right now, because the JSS teachers are feeling that they are being replaced by primary school teachers. So when you look at that, the learner is now suffering. So we are asking the government, why don't you, because now there is one class is not in a high school, why don't you bring those high school teachers to come and manage the JSS? But
so that you split JSS from the primary school?
Yes, so that because we have teachers in high schools, bring them down here so that they will manage this JSS, and some of these science teachers can also come in and help them. But now you'll find that the policy is changing every day.
Okay.
That we need to bring these primary school teachers to teach. They can teach. So these teachers, some of them did not manage sciences and mathematics. So when you go to the higher levels, you find that they are handicapped.
Would that work, Daktari? And what should be the minimum qualification for a teacher to teach JSS?
When the CBC framework was developed, it envisaged 3 levels of basic education. It envisaged a primary school, it envisaged a junior secondary school, as it was described then, it envisaged a senior secondary school. That is what informed the development of the content that was put in those levels. That is why TSC hired university graduates. And even those they are promoting from primary are those who have acquired degrees.
Right.
Because they consider the content at that level should be taught by secondary school teachers. And they are promoting those they feel had actually qualified for promotion after further studying, but they had simply not been promoted because they didn't want to have a bloated wage bill. So for me, the closest that we should be focusing on, and this is what, as an organization, when we wrote the letter to the president, we suggested, was that because of the many mistakes we made, can we now start to remedy this by saying we will go back to the pre-844 model?
Right.
Where we had secondary schools that had O-level only. In this case, those will be junior school only. We had secondary schools that had O-level and 1 stream of A-level, the arts. So in this case, it will be junior school and humanities stream. Then we had the schools that were big, that had the A-level plus 2 streams of A-level and O-level. So those will be the schools that take the 2 streams of STEM and humanities, as well as junior. And then we take the technical track to our polytechnics. Taking the technical track to our polytechnics kills 2 birds with 1 stone. One, it allows us to use the facilities that are there, most of which are underutilized. It takes advantage of the trained personnel who are there, the tutors who are trained in all these subjects, metalwork, building construction. We have those people in our TVET institutions who are trained. And then it will also help us cure the negative perception that has always hung around TVETs, that they are places for people who have failed. Because now we'll be having senior school learners there who will move from TVET to university. And that will create a new reputation around those TVET institutions.
Right.
As we stand now, I think that the solution of saying let's promote primary school teachers and take them to junior, I don't oppose it if the teacher has qualified for that promotion.
Right.
The solution of saying let's bring a senior school teacher to primary, that will not fly. Why? Because today we have an empty class in senior, but that teacher was not just teaching Form 1. That teacher was teaching several other classes, so you can't move that fellow to primary, still is teaching Form 2, 3, and 4.
Right.
If today we took these junior school learners to secondary school and took all the teachers we have employed for JSS to secondary school, we will have no shortage of teachers in secondary school. We'll have solved our problem.
So that you have sort of JSS and senior school together. Because
now let me paint this picture for you. You have this school X that has 2 teachers, both of them humanities. Until this January, when TSC is trying to hire science teachers, they had in some schools 2 teachers who are both humanities.
Yeah.
Those learners are not benefiting at all from STEM. If they were moved together with their teachers to the nearest secondary school, these teachers in humanities will teach other classes there, and plus these ones, and the teachers in that secondary school will also teach these learners in the areas where these teachers can't teach.
Right.
So we will solve this problem by putting these teachers in, moving these learners together with their teachers to the nearest secondary school. And there is a misconception that if we were to take these children to secondary school, they have to board, and many of them are young. That is a misconception. In the study that we did in December, we found that more than 65% of the current junior schools, current primary schools hosting junior, have a secondary school within walking distance. So these children can just be moved to that.
Without having to sleep there?
Yeah, and they don't have to stay there. If they're commuting to this primary school and there's a neighboring secondary school, they can still commute to that secondary school.
Right.
And actually, junior school is a day school, as planned, so that the teacher, the parent, and the child are in constant interaction. They're not supposed to be in a boarding where they stay away from home and the teacher is removed from the parent, because that interaction that is required to determine how they guide the child will not be there. Right. So I think that misconception needs to go. The second misconception is what Malim referred to earlier, about government keeping these learners in primary because it would be cheaper. There was nothing stopping the government from saying, we will bring these learners to secondary school, but for JSS, capitation will be 15,000. And for senior school, it will be 17 or 22. There was nothing stopping them.
Right.
If today you ask, what is it for these primary schools where these learners are, that don't have a lab, don't have anything, they're not buying any reagents, what is it that 15,000 shillings is spent on? Can someone account? I don't think that it can be accounted for. And the only other explanation would be the fact that the government doesn't send the 15,000 anyway. They are sending just a small portion of what they have promised.
Okay, Virginia, we can walk back to your chat. We'll be talking about the tertiary education shortly. But as we do that, Moses, help me here, because last week we were looking at data points and you've realized that 88% of learners that go to sub-county schools scored less than a C+, meaning they didn't qualify to join universities. Yeah. You can interpret that to say that as long as you take your child to a sub-county secondary school, which is like a day school, there's a very high chance of 88% that they won't make it to the university. Majority of those actually scored a D+ or below. What then do we need to do? Because there has been comparisons, even in our stories, between private school and public school, the sort of infrastructure, the sort of quality that is accessible there, but also this big question about school infrastructure. What do we need to do to fix these issues?
Thank you, Sam. The public schools are seriously underfunded by the government. And that is why you realize that those parents who can afford to take their children to private schools will do that one and leave the others. So if you go to what you are seeing on the pictures there, most of the primary schools are in that category in Kenya. And you discover that also the teachers are lacking in most of the schools. So when those learners do their KCPE, they get very low grades because of wasted time. They waste a lot of time in between the standard 1 to 8, and so they get low grades because of teachers are not available, books are not there, and even if books are to come, sometimes they are brought when the term is ending, and it is a total duplication of what they are doing. So when they come to high school, those learners will take a lot of time to be prepared to get to the level which we can talk about passing. Because they need a lot of teaching, they need a lot of preparation, and that time is not there. So that is why you find that most of those who are in sub-county schools are those who scored low, and their entry behavior is also wanting. So you discover that majority from the public schools are the ones who are in the sub-county schools. And those people, those children have not been prepared according to, to the designs of the curriculums. Sometimes they don't cover the syllabus. Sometimes they are not exposed to, these laboratory things we are talking about, because some of the schools do not have. And most of the times you'll find that the children are sent home, even in high schools.
Right.
They have not paid some little money like lunch and so on. So that is why we are saying that the problem is financing of education. We need to prioritize.
Yet it's at 27%.
Yes.
I mean,
is that money?
And Daktari, so this same cohort that is struggling at the sub-county schools, or day schools if you like, they have the majority of the teachers in terms of the proportion, resource allocation, because it is 17,000 per learner, so they have the largest population, so much of the resources are going there, but still posting the lowest of grades.
No, that is not true. Mm-hmm. They are small schools. They are receiving very little money in total per school. Mm-hmm. Yeah? If you allocate the money that has gone to sub-county schools, it's a lot. But the money that has gone to individual schools is very little. Very little, because if you have 100 learners and another school has 1,000, and you're receiving capitation based on the number of learners, mm-hmm. these small schools are terribly disadvantaged mm-hmm. in terms of the resources they are getting. That is one disadvantage. The second disadvantage that they are facing is that they are educating the children of the poor. So parents are not, most of the time, contributing to support these schools. The third disadvantage that they are facing is that they have also been given very few teachers. So you find a small school, they have 2 or 3 TSC teachers, so they have to hire teachers on board of management terms mm-hmm. to supplement. Mm-hmm. Parents are not contributing money to the school, so the head teacher is struggling, yep. trying to get money from somewhere. The money that comes as capitation does not have a vote for hiring a teacher. So they need to look, and it's allocated to the last penny. Right. Yeah? So they are trying to find ways to keep these teachers. These teachers are going for months without pay, so demotivated. Mm-hmm. I was speaking to one head teacher, and she told me, that is not even the main problem. The main problem is that you bring 3-4, because she has majority of her teachers are board of management. And she says, you bring these teachers here when they have now acclimatized with the system. TSC advertises to recruit teachers. All of them vacate, they go to look for TSC jobs. You have to start afresh looking for new teachers to hire on board of management. It takes you 1-2 months to get mm-hmm. another cohort of teachers mm-hmm. to start afresh right. from where those ones left. So these learners are terribly disadvantaged. From the point that Moses makes of, if you walk around this country, you will always see school children on the road on school days. They've been sent home for small monies that parents have not been able to pay. That it's into learning time. Actually, we did an analysis and we controlled for entry behavior. And we realized that if you attend a national school, you will score 3 points above the person who scored same points as you in KCPE but went to a sub-county school. So it's not really entry behavior, it is the learning environment and right. the number of teachers and the facilities available in those schools.
Right. And I think, Dr. what I was talking about is on the face of it, 54% of the cohort, the KCSE 2024, was in sub-county schools.
Yes.
If you had to use that as the basis of resource allocation, then you'll see that majority of the resources, meaning more than half of the resources, went to sub-county schools. There may be many, but on the face of it, it looks getting the giant allocation as compared to other categories of schools. Take us to the university level, because after all this, again, it may look like it is too early. It's just 4 years to go because grade 9 will be joining universities in 4 years' time. What will they be doing after the pathways?
So after the pathways, first of all, we need to know that they have to choose.
Yeah.
So, and they are choosing 3, in which 2 from the main and then 1 from the other.
2 what? 2
learning areas.
Okay.
Yeah, from their main pathway and 1 from the other pathways. So from the tertiary level, this is the senior, in which after the 3 years, grade 10, 11, and 12, they're going to get into the tertiary. So that is where we have the problem is mainly in the tertiary levels, because the government, or let me say that they are stating that each school must be able to at least have be able to have the facilities to do with 2 pathways. For example, if a school might have STEM, they're going to offer STEM-related careers, and then also art and sport.
Okay.
But if they have enough facilities, they can as well offer the
three pathways.
So the main challenge is on the facilities. Do they have them?
Okay.
You'll find that only one school have all the facilities. You'll find that even some do not have at all. So that is the greatest challenge that we have in the senior before they get to the tertiary level.
So what should universities be doing at this point in time?
So right now, they're supposed to be retooling their lecturers so that they can know what are they expecting from the senior. What are they expecting to find in the tertiary? Because there are those who are going to, from STEM, they are going to find them there. They're just waiting for these learners. Yet they don't know what they are going to have or what they are going to teach them when they get to the tertiary levels.
Okay.
So right now, the lecturers need to be retooled, or they're supposed to be exposed to these learning areas in senior so that they can know what are they expecting in the tertiary levels.
Right.
And let me just get back to the question, to what Sir had said about TVET. So one thing, if TVET offers the technicals, this learner will be disadvantaged because remember, they're choosing 2 learning areas from the main pathway and 1 from the other. Does it mean that this learner is only going to have the technicals?
Okay.
Yeah, so that is a question that I just posed.
Interesting question. And I hope you can respond as we begin to wind up. First, what should, because you have taught at the university, and at that time you were teaching at the university when it was under the 844 system.
Yeah.
What should universities be doing as they prepare for CBC degrees?
First of all, they should be rationalizing stuff, looking at who are they going to require, who are they not going to require. They should be training the staff in the areas that they need to teach beyond the current 844 learners. Universities should actually be picking their niche areas and saying, we have this many facilities in the science areas. Can we be the place where all those learners who are going to STEM will want to go? Or we have all these arts facilities. Can we continue to beef them up and be the place where all those going through sports science, through these music careers, everything else will want to go? They should be looking at these pathways and putting together resources to align with the pathways that they want to be able to implement. And those resources are both facilities and personnel. Already universities were supposed to have been ahead, especially schools of education should already be teaching teachers using this new methodology so that these teachers who are graduating from university now should be CBC compliant. But we are not doing that. So we still have to hire teachers. We know that the market now is going to be purely for CBC, but we are still training teachers to teach 844. And that is in itself a problem.
So, Moses, where does the solution come from? I know the Bible says about something else, but in this particular case, you have heard of parents that are opting out of the Kenyan system. Yet, the biggest population in this country will have to go through public education. What shall we do so that we resolve that challenge that you can clearly see at the universities with all the challenges they're facing today? This grade 9 cohort will struggle through it all.
I think first the country needs a discourse about education. And secondly, if I've gotten your question correctly, we need to stop sacrificing education at the altar of politics. Because at the altar of politics, in the sense that when the government is speaking, they are telling parents that education is free. And when you tell parents that education is free, even the little that they are supposed to be charged, they will not pay down there. So you'll find every time parents are complaining that children are being sent home and the money has been brought. What you see from the Minister for Education is we have released 19 billion, but they are not telling us that every learner will get this amount of money. So that is why I'm saying that we need to, to stop sacrificing education and do the financing. We do financing of education so that the learners from the schools down there have all that is required for them.
Do I hear you suggesting a copay by parents? Or what are you saying?
Well, under the Constitution, education is free and compulsory. And if you look at the way the government has tailored the Education Act, is that there is a co-sharing. But you see, when Kibaki came, he just said that day school education is free. But now, because the government is also in politics, they don't want to tell the parents, take responsibility and pay for your children. Yeah. They don't want. They are only saying that we are paying. We are giving 19 billion. And then they are saying, don't send children away. But they are not telling parents, can you please finance education for your children? Because what we want is quality.
Right.
Yes.
We are closing. Virginia, the solution out of this?
So I'll say that when it comes to teacher capacity, we're talking about trainings. Let us try to offer the trainings to these teachers, because one thing, if these teachers are the ones to advise the learners, yet they do not know all about pathways, they do not know anything about the CBC, they just know about the content, but they don't know how they're supposed to go about it. So something needs to be done. There'll be a great problem to these learners if they are relying on these teachers who do not know how to go about it. Secondly, is about the parents. Parents need to be empowered. They need to be empowered all about CBC, because you'll find that most of the parents are still in the previous curriculum, 844. So such that if you ask them about the structure, CBC structure, they do not know. So they need, there need to be a parents' empowerment, because one thing, when you're talking about CBC, that is where we're talking about the PCIs, in which we have the PCIs are pertinent and contemporary issues, one of them being parental empowerment and engagement. So if you're not engaging them, that means they're not core educators anymore. The other thing is about career exposure. Career exposure. We need to make sure that we're exposing these learners to as many careers as possible. Because when you're talking about CBC, we are talking about opportunities out there. So if you're just telling them about the white-collar job, they know about the doctor, about a nurse, about a teacher, yet there are a lot of careers out there. So we need career coaches in different schools. In these schools, we need the career coaches who is going to direct the learners about the careers. And lastly, talking about infrastructure. CBC, it's all about improvisation, but there are some infrastructures, there are some things that we cannot improvise. For example, the workshops, talk about pre-technical, talk about the laboratory. There are those things that we cannot improvise.
Right.
So at least something needs to be done as you visit the resource centers, for example, gravity.
Okay.
And do something about it.
Okay.
Yes.
Daktari, what we shall do, he raises a point about cost sharing. Shall we get there?
First, we need to accept that there's nothing that has value that is free. So what we have had, and this term free education was coined to benefit politicians. But the truth is that government does not have its own money. Government manages public resources. It manages money that comes from Kenyans. So we have to look at Kenyans. We are the ones who have guaranteed in the Constitution that basic education shall be free and compulsory. In effect, shall be publicly funded. So we have to ask the public, how much is the public capable of putting on the table to be able to fund publicly funded education? And let's look at the figures and say, yeah, from our taxes, this is what we are able to raise. And if we were transparent and we were able to show value for every shilling that we have put in education, we'll be able to see the gaps. Where there are gaps, parents have a duty to help fill those gaps. And parents are filling gaps. Government pays for 54% of the cost of education in Kenya as of now. 40% is actually paid by parents. And about 6% is paid by other actors, philanthropies, the Wings to Fly and others. There are accounting for about 6% of the cost of education. If we transparently put these figures on the table, say we have 10 million children in the basic education, the amount of taxes that we are able to raise is this much. From this much, because we can't allocate everything to education, there are competing needs. This is how much we can put on the table, and this will be the gap. We can agree, how is this gap filled?
Okay.
Is this gap filled through philanthropy? Is it filled through parents paying something directly to schools? Secondly, I think I want to echo the point that Moses makes. It's very critical. We need a national conversation on how do we move forward with education. Because where it has reached, we are doing very many things in a way that shows we want to kick the can down the road, and what happens thereafter may not be our business. I think that is important that we have a national conversation. Thirdly, I want Kenyans to come to a consensus that we owe every Kenyan child a good quality education. I know that a lot of people who are well placed have run away and taken their children to the international school, and I understand them. As a parent, you don't want to take your child to a system if you have knowledge that it is not functioning. However, the question that I want to pose is, where will these children go after their international education? They will come back to Kenya. They will work as expatriates for these children we are living in the system that fails. Because these children that we are living in the system that fails are the majority. They are the ones who govern Kenya. So those we take to international school will be expatriates in their own country working for these ones whom we've left in the failing system, which is a very bad thing, because we want this system to work to bring out the best in every child and make every child contribute their best to their country. Running away to the international system, which does not teach children anything about Kenya, is actually undermining one of the goals of our education, which is to build responsible citizens of the country. And you can never be a responsible citizen of a country that you know nothing about. When these children are taken to these international systems, they are as good as in Europe or the US. They are here in Kenya, but their education tells them nothing about Kenya. So when they come back out of it, they're strangers in their own land. And I want us to make sure that our public education works. It is all of us owing every child. Because this notion that children belong to parents is a wrong notion. You will be left in the village. If your neighbor's children don't go to school, the father will die and leave you with them in the village. They will be your problem. Right. Yeah. The fact that they belong to the father whom you considered foolish because he was not taking them to school, notwithstanding, they will be your problem. Can we, as a nation, agree that we need to have a conversation, pick the best way for educating our children and stick to it, and find a lasting solution rather than these very short-term solutions that are, we are administering Panadol to cancer patients, so you offer a solution today that complicates the problem more tomorrow. And I think we need to stop it.
Right. The final closing remarks that are coming from the viewers this morning on what you had to say about this topic. I want us to take a look at that quickly. This is Simon Shira, who is saying, this should actually be on Facebook, not X. We are sacrificing our innocent children through a carelessly based curriculum simply because some few greedy and power-hungry want to steal public resources through this mongrel. Just disband it and revert to it for 4. Otherwise, why should somebody mix primary and secondary students? Susan, quality? Go to schools in remote areas and you will see the real difference between dynasty and hustler in the education sector. Education is no longer an equalizer. May God bless CBC facilitators with strength to overcome pressure in the learning institutions. And finally, Oliver Ooko, you're saying that CBC was simply introduced to serve as a tool for defense mechanism. The government just changed the system so as to scare away graduates. They wanted the 844 graduates to feel small and do not have expectations because they are semi-cooked, so CBC was to be the messiah. Now, the high school children are practicing competency in primary schools without a lab. Maybe you could have introduced woodwork, metalwork, etc. from as early as grade 7. Quite a bit of views there, and it can show you the sort of interest that there is in the country about matters of education. Education affects everyone. Whether you go to school or you don't, you're still affected by education in one way or the other. Thank you so much. Moses Nthurima from Kupet, Virginia Mururi from Gravity CBC Resource Center, and Dr. Emmanuel Manyasa for making time for us. We'll continue talking about this until we can find solutions. We wish the government send representatives to this conversation. My name is Sam Gituku. Have a good night. Bye for now.